It is certain that you cannot walk into the same river twice, but you can still enter the same river. When I was 19, I encountered a girl who ignited my emotions and captivated my heart. It was a whirlwind of emotions that left my parents astounded. They tried to offer me their wisdom, but I was not yet ready to absorb their words. Is there no one else besides Natasha? Consequently, both our families agreed to contribute to a memorable celebration for our wedding. However, they decided that since we were adults, we should handle the wedding arrangements ourselves, and we didn't mind. We reached out to a group of like-minded students, and although our appetizers were limited and the alcohol was inexpensive, we were content. We officially became occupants of a family room. This building primarily hosted professors and university staff, which resulted in a somewhat intrusive environment, forcing us to speak softly in our moments of passion. Young Oksana Vasilievna enjoyed conversing with us in the communal kitchen, while her husband, a stern man, would often pass by and greet us through clenched teeth. Oksana explained that Maxik didn't appreciate large gatherings due to his fatigue from work, presenting him as a mere piece in the grand tapestry of love. Unexpectedly, we also discovered the necessity of focusing on our studies. Our grades suffered, yet we managed to complete the semester. During winter break, we visited my parents and resided with them for a week and a half. At a certain point, I began to sense that my mother was carrying a burden. I attempted to inquire a few times, but she dismissed my concerns. "Mom, is Natasha bothering you? Do you not like my wife?" I questioned wearily. "Darling, you chose a partner for yourself, and it's my responsibility to love her as if she were my own daughter. Give me some time, and everything will be fine," my mother reassured me. "I believe there's something you're not telling me," I persisted. "Don't worry, when we graduate, we will find our own place to live." "I won't subject you to sharing an apartment with her," she replied. It appeared that my mother was hesitant to share a 2-bedroom apartment with her daughter-in-law. Just before we left, my mother couldn't contain her worries any longer and confided in me. "Son, I can't keep quiet any longer. I've noticed something concerning with Natasha. Several times, I've overheard her talking to someone named Maxim on the phone. They talk in a way that's more than just acquaintances. Why does she end the conversation with kiss? It doesn't seem right," she expressed. At that moment, I felt my mother was excessively concerned, so I did my best to reassure her. Once we were settled in the dormitory, curiosity got the better of me, and I asked Natasha about the calls to Maxim. She explained that he was the leader of her group and responsible for coordinating their projects. Since the group was divided into pairs, they had been struggling with dividing the topics. To resolve the issue, Maxim had to frequently contact everyone. Natasha assured me that the calls were purely related to their academic assignments, as students often argued over the tasks. Life continued as usual during the new semester. We often socialized with the teacher in the adjacent room. Her husband still ignored us intentionally. Everything would have remained unchanged if not for an unexpected incident in my class. Due to a malfunction, the battery in our corner classroom leaked and splashed rusty water on a few students, including myself. Although not critical, it left us wet and uncomfortable, necessitating a change of clothes. Upon returning to the room, I found new pants and a sweater and discarded my wet attire by the entrance. I then noticed that Natasha's boots were still there, but her flip-flops were missing. It became apparent that she wasn't in class and was likely somewhere else in the dorm, possibly in the kitchen. With that in mind, I headed towards the kitchen, passing our roommate's room on the way. To my surprise, the halls were silent as everyone attended class, except for faint sighs echoing from behind our neighbor's door. Well, it's their business what they do and when, I thought, dismissing the noise. However, my thoughts were interrupted when I heard a man's voice say, "Natasha, that's enough." And without hesitation, an all too familiar voice responded affirmatively. Courtesy and propriety momentarily faded from my mind as I instinctively turned the doorknob to enter the room. Unfortunately, it was locked. Fueled by frustration, I began shouting to be let in. Eventually, our neighbor Maxim opened the door slightly, but I swiftly pushed past him and stormed inside. Natasha looked at me with wide, startled eyes. Without wasting any time, we returned to our room. I began packing my belongings into a small bag while she paced restlessly from corner to corner. Suddenly, my mother's words about the calls to Maxim resurfaced in my mind. It all began to make sense, forming a clearer and more significant picture of what was happening. "Why?" I asked, curious about her response. The girl shrugged and replied, "I don't know. It just feels strange to be surrounded by so many men, and yet I'm supposed to belong to only one. I'm in my 20s and it's kind of weird." Her answer puzzled me, prompting me to reflect on our failed marriage. What did we truly want? We had no foundation and married for societal expectations. I remembered my parents' words about our wedding and felt grateful that we hadn't gone into debt for a lavish celebration. I also appreciated my parents for allowing me to make my own mistakes. It has been 5 years since our divorce. I've dated a few girls but haven't made much progress. During the Christmas holidays, I bumped into Natasha in town. We exchanged greetings and started chatting. Eventually, we decided to grab some tea and seek warmth. I discovered that she was alone at that moment. A couple of days later, Natasha called me with a work-related question. I offered her advice and then mustered the courage to invite her for a walk. We held hands and eventually, we embraced on a park bench. "The body remembers," Natasha said. "It remembers very well," I replied, stroking her leg. That night, she stayed over at my place. The next morning, as we sat in the kitchen, nostalgia filled the air. I saw not just the student but a mature woman with her own life perspective, opinions, and future plans. I found myself getting bored. "Can I visit you sometimes?" Natasha inquired, playfully pulling the elastic band of my shorts. She suggested staying overnight a couple of times a week to start, and I agreed. One day, while we were dining at a restaurant, a man approached our table. Natasha introduced us, revealing him to be her colleague Andre. She went to talk with him and returned visibly upset. She explained that Andre was the last to leave work and had overheard that bonuses had been reduced for the entire department. Meanwhile, I was enjoying the time spent with both my ex-girlfriend and my new girlfriend. Natasha had truly matured. After a few months, I realized it was time to move on to a new stage in my life. One day in town, I ran into Andre and greeted him. As we stood waiting for the traffic light, we engaged in conversation. "Have you signed everything?" Andre asked. Perplexed, I replied, "What did I sign?" He explained, "Well, the divorce papers." My Natashka mentioned there were a lot of documents. Confused, I asked, "What's your Natashka like?" He responded, "Well, the one who used to be yours." Attempting to make light of the situation, I joked with Andre. We struggled to understand each other for a while until the truth finally came out. It had been 2 years since Natasha and Andre started dating. He even proposed to her, but the wedding had been delayed indefinitely until they purchased an apartment. Additionally, it turned out that there was a mistake in the paperwork when Natasha and I divorced, and that's why we were meeting at the restaurant to sort out the divorce issues while she was dating Andre. I was taken aback by this revelation while Andre lit a cigarette, and apparently, the documents even mentioned our sexual encounters for the past 3 months. In that moment, I couldn't comprehend what was going on in the mind of a woman who couldn't be with just one man. Women are not perfect, and one cannot have it all at once. Wealth, handsomeness, attentiveness, and sexual prowess. But one should keep their composure. If something is not satisfactory, communicate it. However, she seemed to be piecing together a puzzle of men, focusing on their individual qualities. Like this one is rich, and that one is handsome, and so on. How is it that I'm only 25 and already entangled in this mess? It's true what they say. that a habitual cheater can never be faithful. Not at 20, not at 25.